Alors,
Allô?
Tracy, I think we'll wait 4 more minutes before starting the session. We are still waiting for some more participants to join.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I think we have 108 participants already joined in. We'll give it another 2-3 minutes, and then I think we can begin.
Bonsoir Dana. Merci d'être avec nous.
Un plaisir, madame et messieurs.
I think we can begin. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this session on the LGBT, social responsibility and inclusion at the workspace. My name is Tracy Fernandez, and on behalf of IFCCI and Alliance Francaise de Bombay, I will help steer today's interactions. Before I begin, may I request you to kindly feel free to post your questions in the chat box, along with your name. We would like the session to be as interactive as possible. Having said that, please note that there are a few copies of the book Veristan that is up for grabs and will be signed personally by the author himself, Mr. Parmesh Sahani, who's also one of the speakers today. The winner will be announced at the end of the final panel discussion, so please do stay tuned. For now, without any further ado, I would like to welcome Ms. Payal Kanwar, Director General IFCCI, and Stéphane Dutelot, Director, Alliance Francaise de Bombay, to please share your welcome remarks.
Thank you very much, Tracy, and good evening, everyone joining us this evening. I know we have close to 300 registrations for this event, so I think numbers speak louder than words. This is going to be an excellent session, and we're looking forward to it. Thank you very much for joining us for this very important session on LGBTQIA and discussing social responsibility and inclusivity at the workspace. We're very pleased to be partnering with Alliance Francaise de Bombay for this event. So, you know, when we started organizing or discussing this event back in December, so our regional director, Bruno Broncard and Tracy, mentioned this event to me, and then they started, you know, promoting the event and talking to companies. We've been so overwhelmed and so, you know, surprised at how forthcoming our companies have been and how members have been so excited about putting this event together and willing to share their best practices and their policies with regards to diversity and inclusion. We have an excellent lineup of speakers today, some of whom are friends, and they're going to be sharing their journeys, their stories on social acceptance, and of course, you know, the ground reality of what is going on in India today. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from them. I'd also like to thank all of our companies for coming together, and of course, our sponsors. We have ABC Consultants, we have BNP Paribas India, we have Capgemini India, Godrej Industries, Ketan & Co., Pernod Ricard. I see Thibaut is with us. He's sitting in Brazil. So thank you so much for being with us this evening. And I don't want to speak too much because there's so much to learn this evening. So over to you, Stefan. And once again, welcome to you all.
Thank you, Payal. So good evening to you all. And on behalf of the Alliance Française de Bombay, I would like to wish you all and to wish our panelists a warm welcome to tonight's conference, LGBTQIA, Social Responsibility and Inclusivity at the Workspace. So many of you know the Alliance Française as a language center, arguably the most prominent in Mumbai to learn French as a foreign language. But as you may also know, we have been dedicated to promoting French and Francophone cultures in Mumbai for over 80 years, in a spirit that fosters liberty, equality, and fraternity. The idea of jointly organizing this conference came during talks with Bruno Broncard, the director of the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce in Mumbai, when we realized that fostering LGBT inclusion in the workplace and in society at large was a priority for both our institutions. And this, in fact, comes as no surprise, as it has been a central issue in France for a number of years, in keeping with the strong legacy the French have of promoting human rights and the rights of the individual. The presence among us today of Madame Dana Porcarescu, Deputy Head of Mission at the French Embassy in Delhi, bears witness to the importance of the issue at the political level. Thus, it seemed only natural for us at Alliance Française de Bombay to co-organize this event, as we have organically included LGBT equality in our everyday functioning, and this for a number of years, may I say. Indeed, we have consistently supported relevant initiatives in the field, such as Kashish, the Mumbai International Queer Film Festival, one of the largest in Asia. This conference is also an opportunity for us to learn from industry leaders how we can institutionalize forward-looking policies which safeguard the interest of the community. This is just the first of such initiatives we will unfold in 2021 as France co-chairs the UN-sponsored Generation Equality Forum that kicks off on March 8th and will run until June. We hope you will join us on this journey by keeping an eye on our website and on our social media at IF Mumbai on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So I wish you now a fruitful evening with our distinguished panelists and moderators. I also extend my thanks to the sponsors who support this event. And I thank you all for enthusiastically joining our project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Payal and Stefan. I now invite Ms. Dana Porcarescu, Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of France to India, to say a few words, please.
Well, thank you very much. I am very proud to be with you tonight for several reasons. In addition to my diplomatic job, I have been a workers' union representative for 20 years now. And in my daily work, my engagement has always been to put égalité, as you can see here in our motto, at the heart of the workplace, and to make it a better place, to make it a place of opportunity for all. So when I look back across 20 years of workers' union engagement, what I see is a constant fight for diversity and for inclusiveness. Fashions come and go. So we had the era of how to include disabled. We had, and it comes back regularly, the gender issues. And we have social inclusiveness, we had many other policies, and France has always been an experimental space for this kind of progress. And it's striking, looking back over 20 years, that a lot of progress has taken place, but not exactly at the same pace in all dimensions. And I think it's timely that IFCCI and Alliance Française have proposed this debate, because the instruments to promote inclusiveness and diversity are more or less the same. I mean, the lessons that we have learned in the previous fights, we need to apply them in order not to waste time and reinvent different things. So again, bear with me, this is a very personal experience, but I will share it with you. 3 points that I've seen across the fight for diversity is that anyway, a place of work that is diverse, it's a better place. We don't do diversity just because as a token answer to some regulation or constraints or fashion or something. If you play diversity as an asset, then you reap the rewards afterward. Everybody is happier, everybody is more creative, and everybody shows solidarity. And when an organization or a company has this, you can withstand any kind of crisis that is coming your way. And the recent COVID crisis has shown this. If everybody thinks alike and everybody behaves alike, chances are that you're missing sometimes the point. So again, looking back into my experience, I can say 3 things. It's very important that not to think that change is going to come on its own. It never comes on its own. Change, it's a decision that we are collectively making. It's a moment where the organization and the company is deciding that we are going to take into account and to make a policy, a company policy, to introduce a change. So it's not, if you're waiting for the stars to align themselves, it can happen, but it's going to happen long after you're gone from the working place. So take position. That's the starting point for improving things, is to take position and to make a clear policy, to make it clear what does it mean to have a position that is inclusive and that is respectful for diversity and including sexual choices. So once this is the position has been made by the organization, the second step is to make it known, because that's what it makes it sustainable in the long term. You let it be known around you, internally, of course, to all the members of the organization, to all the employees, but also externally, to your partners, to the companies you're working with. This is making it irreversible. It's making change irreversible. You can't walk back on something that you publicly decided to support. Once all these intellectual steps have been taken, there's a little bit of bureaucracy, including in companies, to be had. You need to formalize your engagement. It cannot just remain some discussion, some intention, some ideas exchanged, and some good-willing promises. You need to formalize it. And there are lots of instruments, and we can look at companies in France that have taken those steps, and quite a few companies in India as well that have started engaging into this path. What does it mean? You make code of conduct, you make a charter, you make an ethic pledge, you make a framework agreement, whatever works, but you just take the step to make it formal, to make it for people to refer to it and touch it and share it and make it their own. And once this step is made, well, there's an additional one, which is make it accepted by everyone, which means acting for prevention. You have to do training, you have to do awareness, you have to do diagnostic to be sure that if you have an issue, you know how to solve it. Equality, again, treating in an equal manner all members of organization or all co-workers, that's a must. Whatever is happening, positive or negative, everybody must feel that they are treated the same way. And of course, for the serious cases where things don't develop as wished, you have to have a sanction. People need to know that making a bad joke is not just making a bad joke. Making a joke is making a professional error. And sanction needs to be there. It doesn't mean that you have to implement it all the time and put the LGBT police in the corridors of your company, but it means that it sends a message that you're serious about it. And that kind of formalization is what paves the way for a better place. People will feel they can talk about it. People will learn what is disrespectful and what is not tolerable. They will talk about it. They will make it their own policy. And again, you don't have to choose between top-down or bottom-up approach. You need it at all levels of the company and all the time. It's not a one-shot. It has to be a permanent feature of engaging in a organization or in a company. So let's look at the half full glass. Let's see that progress has been made over the years, including in India. It's probably more difficult in India because these issues are not easily talked about. You don't have examples in the media. You don't always have examples in the movie industry. So let's look at the progress that has been made. And the fact that the subject is an open subject, everybody can exchange, companies can exchange, and be demanding with the companies about these changes. If I'm thinking about one of the first companies that has adopted a charter for LGBT rights, which is Air France KLM, do expect from the company branches in India to behave the same way as the headquarters behaved in Europe. And that's something that multinational companies need to show. Once the progress is made in one branch, just spread it around. It might take longer in some areas of the world than in others, but you will get finally there. Again, because diversity is being competitive, is being attractive, is preparing better, is more resilient, is preparing better for the future. So sorry for being a little bit too long, but as you can understand, these issues have been working on them for many years, so they are very dear to my heart, and I'm looking forward to listening to your exchanges tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tana. We will now move on to a fireside chat with Sue Ann Vaz, Associate Director, ABC Consultants, and Mr. Parmesh Sahani, Vice President, Godrej Industries, Head of Godrej Culture, and author of Gay Bombay and Queeristan. The floor is over to you, Sue Ann. We cannot hear you.
Sue Ann, we can't hear you. Can you all hear me? Right?
Now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Am I audible, Tracy?
Yes, Sue Ann, you are audible now.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, Tracy. A very good evening to each one of our spectators today. Thank you for setting aside time for this important and extremely relevant conversation in today's times. By way of introduction, I'm Sue Ann Vaz. I lead the value-added services portfolio at ABC Consultants, which is one of India's oldest and largest recruitment firms. Diversity and inclusion is a large piece of that portfolio, and I feel extremely fortunate to be a part of today's dialogue. Thank you to the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce, to the Alliance Française, and to our sponsors. With me today, I have a superlatively interesting personality. Vice President at Godrej Industries, Head of the award-winning Godrej India Culture Lab, TED Senior Fellow, Yale World Fellow, World Economic Forum YGL, fashionista, pioneer of the D&I dialogue in the corporate world, and author of the books Queeristan and Gay Bombay. A warm welcome to Parmesh Sahani.
Thank you, Sue Ann. It's lovely to be here with all of you and so many friends on the panel, so many friends in the organizers. Very, very happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Parmesh, for joining us today. Interestingly, I met you 6 or 8 years ago when you were the speaker, panelist at an event that was talking about gender equality at that time. That was the flavor of those years. And you were talking about diversity and inclusion and belonging, and what workplaces must do to sort of step up, to be a more diverse and inclusive workplace. And here we are today to talk about everything you talked about 8 years ago.
Yeah, we were ahead of the curve then, but I think the time is really now. And I'm just so glad with the inspiring words that Ambassador Dana said at the beginning, right? I mean, it's time to take a position, make the change happen now. I mean, actually, the time was so many years ago, but we really can't wait anymore. So I'm just so glad that finally the change is happening, top down, bottoms up. We're having these conversations at multiple forums. Just relieved more than anything else.
Super to hear that. And coming to your book, what a book, I must say. I've read it. I read Gay Bombay. For those of you who don't know, Gay Bombay was released by Parmesh in 2008. Must read. And Queeristan was released late last year. And that's another must read. So that's 2 additions to your reading list. Parmesh, I must say that you wrote in a very new, very captivating style, colloquial almost, English. It's almost new to this sort of business book reader, right? And it is a business book, nicely divided into 4 parts. I think that's a lovely, beautiful blend of personal, and then, you've sort of hit the crux of the questions that organizations have been asking for years in terms of the policies, etc. Right? A question for you here. Is there anything that you wanted to include in Queeristan but couldn't for whatever reason? Maybe some sort of story there, some sort of aspect. Can you share it with us today?
Yeah, well, we cut out, the book was much, much bigger in length. And that's the hardest, whether you're a filmmaker trying to make sense of your material or whether you're an author. So there was a lot that was left on the editing floor, in a matter of speaking. But you've identified, I really like, how you've identified the source, and, just of the book, right? Because even with the format, with the writing, with the conversational tone, the intent was to queer the very idea of a business book. So it's not just a book about queer people and queerness. The book itself is an act of queering, because why should a business book be written in a particular way? Why can't it be deeply personal, deeply reflective, anecdotal? So, we have Foucault in the book, and we have Bollywood, and we have, everything in that sense, right? Because business people, are also human beings, right? With desires, with memories, with friends, with families. So the idea was to write a deeply personal business book that chronicles my own life, showcase to you the lives of so many incredible queer individuals. And there are so many who are going to be part of this session as well, Manav, Cyril, so many others as well. And give people who are reading just a glimpse into our lives, our worlds, our successes, our dreams, our support systems, and show you how when you include, how the world really expands and opens up and everyone benefits, right? So in this process, right? So with personal stories, stories of others, policies, business cases, resources that one can use, what got edited out, I feel, and I wish that perhaps if we do a director's cut, I can put more of, are more of the personal stories of love and acceptance. Because, when we look all around the world right now, including in India as well, there are so many stories of struggle, strife, cruelty, and discrimination. But there are also incredible stories of families loving and accepting you. And, Cyril is going to be on this, but, there's a whole chapter in which I talk about queer weddings and, Cyril and Keshav's wedding, for example, in Goa, right? Blessed by family members, surrounded by love, which is also happening in India, right? There are so many workplaces which are accepting, and I had to because it was becoming too many stories and less of that. And also the changes that have taken place since the book came out, because LGBTQ inclusion in India is, it's moving at such a rapid pace. So I write in the book about Grace Banu, who's a transgender activist, for example. And by the time when I finished the book last year, she was the first trans engineer, and she had started this incredible organization called Trans Rights Now in Tamil Nadu. By some months later, she's done this great project, which is really a public-private win-win-win partnership, where she is set up a transgender-led agricultural dairy cooperative farm with private sector. I'm very glad that Godrej has contributed to this. So private sector companies, the state government of Tamil Nadu, and NGOs, right? So these kind of models have just come up, right? So I mean, I bet there'll be another edition in which I'll be able to add all of this. But just to answer your question, it's very, very hard. Just what to leave out and what to put in. So it was a challenge.
Sure. And some exciting piece of news here for our viewers. Parmesh has been kind enough to say to us that he's going to give away 3 copies of this fantastic read to people who ask the best questions during this event. The names will be announced by the IFCCI at the end of the event. So for all our viewers out there, please use your chat button and keep your questions coming in. We will be stopping for a quick 5 minutes. We've got about 10 minutes more of the chat, and then we will take Q&A as much as we can at the end of this segment. Excellent. So I personally walked away from the book hopeful, heart-warmed, and inspired. Like I wanted to go back to my desk the next morning and say, hey, we've got this stuff to do at the office. And I think that was the desired effect, right? Okay. Excellent. So after Gay Bombay, after Queeristan, what next, Parmesh? Are we going to see a web series? Because I think all the content, all the tick marks are there for a nice, neat web series, which is going to hit the top of the list. So is that on the books?
I don't know. Have you been talking to people at Netflix? I mean, as a consultant to work for them. Well, there are, plans. There are lots of plans, because the truth is, this is the moment, right? But I was actually thinking, at least for someone like me, I should do a book on straight people, because I've just realized I know very little about straight people. Who are they? How are they like? Do they love just like queer people? Do they fight with their partners just like we queer people do? So I think it might be quite nice to do, a series on straight people as well. I can just join us now. So I think that would be, that's in jest. I think a lot of work that's going to be happening right now, for me over the next couple of years, is to take the message of Queeristan and push it. There is such momentum on the ground, as we heard in the opening remarks, right? Companies, organizations like yours are realizing that, being inclusive makes you more money. It's a $5 trillion global economy. It's a $200 billion Indian economy. It makes you more innovative. The inclusion dividends are 8x. Companies that are inclusive are 8 times more innovative than companies that are not. So it's like a no-brainer, right? It attracts the best talent. It increases your reputation exponentially. So there's really this, and we are at this inflection point where organizations are realizing that it's truly win-win. We can make more money, be more innovative, give jobs to queer people, and really, really push forward and create a better world, right? So I'm going to be actually spending the next 2 years in taking this message of Queeristan everywhere, to other companies, pushing my own company, Godrej, which has had an early start about a decade ago on the LGBTQ journey as well, further on this journey, working with organizations like the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and so many others, CII, IFCCI. A lot of the work in India happens through these industry-wide organizations, right? And all have recognized how important, inclusion is. Colleges, MBA programs. So it's going to be Queeristan all the way for the next couple of years. But at some point, I think I should explore, straight people. I think it'll be a good anthropological exercise for me personally, just to understand how straight people are.
That's interesting and fantastic. I think on that note of, involving more of the LGBTQIA community into the workplace, one question there. So, for people who are recruiting at the recruiter's desk, they feel that when they want to, set aside, say, a quota or, a certain percentage, or they want to move towards a diverse and inclusive workspace, they say, hey, let's, involve, say, differently abled candidates. And for lack of a better phrase, you do have something called a disability certificate that, differently abled person can come to a recruiter's desk and say, we fall under this so-called quota. Not my favorite word, but for the sake of parlance. There's no such certification for the LGBTQIA community. So what's your commentary around how recruiters can sort of, approach this whole piece without any certification, without any classification, qualification, reservation, etc.? Any thoughts there?
So see, personally, like you, I'm very uncomfortable with the certification business. I don't see people asking straight people to produce straightness certificates. What nonsense. How do you prove you're straight?
Okay.
But the word itself is rife with a lot of connotations in the queer community, because the new Trans Act, which has come out, one of the key disagreements and one of the key resistances within the trans community to the Trans Act is this thing of certification, where someone has to certify a magistrate, one, and for all of us, including straight people, including queer people, including persons with disabilities of all kinds, including persons who think they're able-bodied, we are who we say we are. Self-certification, self-assertion, self-identification is the... So I don't think that organizations that want to recruit should ask people to produce certificates of any kind. Organizations should recruit diverse teams to reflect the world around them. The truth is that in any population, 6 to 10% of your population are LGBTQ, right? And there are similar numbers for PWD and so on, right? So you should be recruiting, your teams should reflect the world outside. And the question you should ask is, right? I mean, if you have, say, 500 people, 1,000 people, right? There would be, if you have 1,000 people, 60 to 100 are queer. Do you have an atmosphere in which they're being able to be their true self, where they can be empowered, where the innovation potential can be unleashed because they're not hiding who they are, etc., right? So, I mean, that is the framework with which organizations should think. I'm fed up of organizations thinking that they are doing certain community groups a favor.
A favor.
The only favor that you are doing is to yourself when you recruit queer talent.
Absolutely.
You will be more innovative. You will not die because your innovative talent has given you different ways of seeing the world and producing products and services that are especially relevant. So the only favor you're doing is to yourself. And anyone who's listening on this, who's thinking of hiring talent from various diverse pools, you need to understand this, right? You're doing yourself a favor. So, come on this journey for the right reasons. And let's stop talking about things like certificates, etc. Because to me, they're not, I don't find them to be useful in any way.
Sure. I think that's rather profound, and I truly hope that more and more organizations step up to this understanding where it's more about belonging through inclusion versus getting into these drives to hire more women, for that matter, or more differently abled people, and it's just about moving towards a one world, so to say, without any biases, whether it's gender or caste or religion or sexual orientation. One last question for the segment, and then we can move into the Q&A from the audience. To your mind, Parmesh, what are the 3 agenda points that organizations must immediately focus on to be more diverse and inclusive in their cultures?
Yeah, thanks. We had Ambassador Dana gave us a great 3-step guide at the beginning itself. Building off these, I really want to think that any organization that is interested in this should invest in inclusion for the long term. So it's about having the right policies and infrastructure in place, right? By policies, we mean a comprehensive set of policies. not just anti-discrimination policy, but anti-discrimination policy, same-sex partner benefits policy, gender affirmation policy, relocation policies. There are multiple policies that you need to do. And please don't say we'll do one this year, one next year, one later. You don't stagger your policies for straight people, So, you have to offer all the policies together, right? But policies are just on paper. You need to provide the infrastructure of this, right? Which is, are you sensitizing your teams, your existing teams, to welcome either new hires who might be queer, or hires, your existing employees who might be queer but are not comfortable enough to be who they are because they feel they're not in a comfortable space. Do you have physical infrastructure? Basic stuff like all gender washrooms and things like that for your trans employees who may wish to use these as well, right? So policies and infrastructure to me, one. Step two is really the culture that you work on and that you do it daily on a day-to-day basis. It could be simple things like changing your fonts. It could be simple things as sending invites to your leaders by saying, we would like you and your partner, and not just assuming that it's Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so.
Right.
Or just not just assuming that if it's a man, it would be a wife and so on, right? But just changing your words, changing pronouns, things like that. And that's, again, a constant process. I think the third, and it's really the proof of the pudding, is an active hiring. You have to go out and indicate to the communities that we want you, we want your talent, you come on board and we will go on this journey together. A lot of organizations, unfortunately, are very well-meaning, celebrate one diversity day, put up some rainbow flags and rainbow filters on the Instagram account for 1 week in a year, and then do nothing for the rest of the time. All this shosha should come after you've done the investment in this long-term process. I'm not against glamour, I'm not against rainbows, but I think rainbows should be the end of the process, not the beginning. So for all those companies who are listening, or individuals who think that it's as easy as just, some rainbow flag waving, no. We want your jobs, not your rainbow flags and Instagram filters.
That's very true. In fact, ABC Consultants, we have a recruiter training program for organizations in which we touch upon some part of this to say, how do you drop your biases when you are assessing someone and interviewing someone, your sort of cognitive bias, your unconscious biases that we have, and we've all been conditioned. I mean, we've all been brought up, I'm an 80s kid, and we've all been brought up with a certain conditioning, and it's nobody's fault here. And I remember, Parmesh, talking to you, and you said, it's not about resisting this whole piece, it's just being ignorant. We don't know enough to be embracing the whole piece. So I think, what your book is doing, what you're doing for the next 2 years is phenomenal, because you're spreading awareness, and that's really the starting point of, the entire ball rolling towards, embracing this culture, because it's really not about resistance, it's about ignorance. We don't know enough. Yeah. Excellent. With that, I'm going to move into Q&A. I see one question coming in from the audience, and that's about, the person says that not many schools cover enough of LGBTQIA in their curriculum. Could we possibly be bringing up a whole new ignorant generation?
Yeah, well, I think absolutely right. We don't have enough schools, at least in this country, talk about gender identity. I mean, we don't have sex education mostly. Even when it's there, those classes are not taken. So yeah, we have deep ignorance and a deep discomfort at the school and college level. Although I must say that there are incredible schools like Tagore International in Delhi, for example. Colleges like this in Mumbai, Tagore International in Delhi has an LGBTQ club where kids from 6th standard all the way to 12th standard talk about LGBTQ issues, and it's run with the students, parents, and teachers as well. And they are spreading this awareness to multiple schools in the NCR region and so on in other parts of India as well. And there are so many other progressive schools as well. But by and large, it is a big issue. And even with colleges, there are many colleges across the country that teach, that have LGBTQ things as part of literature departments or media. There are gender departments, etc. But there are very few like this, for example, which have all gender hostels and things like that, right? Or So a lot of work needs to be done. And while there are certain states which at curriculum level are doing a lot of work, so whether it's Maharashtra and so many others which are trying to like widen and broaden the curriculum, at least in the state textbooks, in the SSC textbooks or HSC textbooks and all, significant work needs to be done. But while that is happening, and this is why I've emphasized the workplace, and I chose after the 2018 Supreme Court judgment to work on the workplace, and which is why Queeristan is set in the Indian workplace, is while this societal shift happens, and we start talking about, you know, LGBTQ issues in homes, in schools, in colleges, etc. I believe that we need to start talking about it much more in our workplaces, because workplaces can then feed backward into, you know, into homes, into schools, into colleges, because there's a direct, we can make a direct case for inclusion at the workplace, right? You can reap the benefits immediately. And it is an organization's enlightened self-interest, which is why the word I use in Queeristan is that organizations need to act in loco parentis. We who are running companies need to do the work that, you know, parents and schools of our children are not doing. Because by the time employees come to us, they know how to calculate, they know Excel, they may know how to build things, but they've not asked themselves, who am I? What matters to me? What is love? What is happiness? I can be happy with, you know, whoever I choose. I can imagine myself as whatever I want to be. We are not taught that. So by the time we reach workplaces, we are not fully formed human beings, I feel. So as workplaces, if we can empower our employees to make them these whole human beings, I think it will have a ripple effect in other of these institutions. But of course, we need all institutions to change.
Excellent. Parmesh, with that, we come to the end of our segment, and thank you for sharing all your insights. I think I'm walking away inspired, a little wiser, and very hopeful for the future. Thank you for putting Queeristan out there. I hope that more and more people read this book. It's next level. If you ask me, you were always ahead of the time, and all the best in your journey.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suvan and Parmesh, for a very interesting session. Our next session is a panel discussion on LGBTQIA transformation towards social acceptance. I am pleased to invite Mr. Ravin Minchandani, Vice President, Pune Chapter, and Chairman and Managing Director, Adore Powertron, Ms. Apsara Reddy, National Spokesperson, Tamil Nadu Government and Senior Editor, Deccan Chronicles, Mr. Cyril Forbois, Founder and Director, Chronocare Cosmetics Private Limited, and Prince Manvendra Singh Goel, Chairman and Co-Founder, Lakshya Trust. Ravin, the floor is virtually yours.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Can you just confirm that you can hear me okay?
You're very clear.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to what promises to be an exceptional session. LGBTQ-related subjects have been part of the societal discussions from ancient times in India. The argumentative Indian always has an opinion, though traditionally that opinion usually gave way to acceptance of difference. Today we probe whether we can still be a society that gladly accepts difference, hopefully also probing the challenges to acceptance and what needs to be done to make our society more aware and as a result more understanding and accepting of differences, celebrating our famed Indian diversity in everything, not just food, language, looks, color, culture, and religions, but most importantly also sexuality. No one should ever be judged or made to feel less because of who they love or choose to make their life with. Mainstream media often reduces this debate to a discussion on sexual preferences. But being from the LGBT community is so much more than that. It's about living your truth, being unshakable in your roots, and having the courage to see yourself in the mirror without the fear of judgment and facing head-on all the myriad of challenges that popular culture and conventions keep throwing at us as roadblocks. In 2021, we need to have more love in our world, more love and more acceptance, more inclusion, and most of all, more understanding. This is the only way we will have a successful society embracing every color of our diverse rainbow. As the deputy head of mission for the French embassy said, change does not come. It is a decision that we need to make. So perhaps it is time to take a position on acceptance. Today, FT has put together an exceptional panel for you. We talked to 3 panelists with deep personal journeys on the subject of acceptance, and we will go through their experiences and their challenges. Joining us today is Apsara Reddy, who is a transgender Indian woman who is a well-known journalist and activist. A graduate in journalism with an MA in broadcasting, Apsara has worked with the BBC World Service, The Hindu, and the New Indian Express. She is currently the national spokesperson for the Tamil Nadu government, the AIADMK, and a senior editor of the Deccan Chronicle. We are privileged also today to have Prince Manvendra Singh Gohil. In 2005, Manvendra, who hails from Rajpipla in Gujarat, publicly came out as gay. He was quickly anointed by the Indian and world media as the first openly gay royal. He was disinherited as an immediate reaction by the royal family, though they eventually reconciled, and he's appeared on American talk show, the Oprah Winfrey Show, and the British BBC Three's Undercover Princess. Finally, joining us also is Cyril Fourbois, founder and director of Chronocare. Sorry, Cyril, I'm mispronouncing your name. Cyril is a business management graduate from France who's been in India 15 years. India has provided him the opportunity to start his own business, but also find lifelong love. After a 10-year-long relationship, Cyril married his partner, the executive director of Lalit Hotels, Keshav Suri, in Paris because Article 377 was in force at the time in India. He does believe, though, that post-377, things have changed for the better, and now India is well on its way to being an inclusive country. My first question then would be to Apsara, because Apsara has a limited time with us. She's busy campaigning in Tamil Nadu. Apsara, and I will pose the same question to all 3 panelists. Perhaps we can talk to start with about your journey. What are the challenges you have faced along the way for social acceptance? Because that is, in a sense, the theme of our discussion today, acceptance.
Good evening to everybody. I think it's such an honor to be on such a panel and hear diverse voices. I've been tuned in from right at the start. So thank you for having me. And I think to talk about the challenges, I think one needs to understand that in India, I think there's a lot of stereotype attached. I can talk about trans women. You know, the first thing people said to me was, are you going to be a makeup artist? Are you going to be a fashion designer? Are you going to dance at bars? Are you just going to bless at weddings? Nobody really understood that, you know, I could educate myself. I could be an architect. I could be a pilot. I could be an engineer. I think there's a lot of stereotype around trans women. I think it's predominantly because most of the work that we find, because of the lack of opportunity, is sex work. So I think I had to break that initially, even with family, kind of to make them understand that, you know, I'm going to be the same responsible individual and child with the same amount of intellect and articulation and vision, and not just be limited by what they see around themselves. So that was a challenge. And also the biggest challenge was for people to understand that homosexuals and trans individuals are very different. I think people always in India don't understand that trans women can go through the entire surgery and become anatomically can become women. So I had to, you know, this whole concept of Ardhanarishwara, people throw at me, oh, you're an Ardhanarishwara. Oh, there's almost reverence when they talk about Ardhanarishwara. Ardhanarishwara is half man, half woman, Lord Shiva. So I had to explain, no, that's not necessarily true because I've completely transitioned and done the SRS. So there were a lot of, you know, stereotypes and judgments and prejudices that I had to overcome. In the political sphere, it's very difficult. Forget about trans women. It's very difficult for women. There's not enough space for women in parliament and assemblies, in any seats of power. So I think to find myself in the main frame of politics, next to a Jayalalitha madam, next to a Rahul Gandhi ji, next to Sonia Gandhi ji, or next to Mr. Amit Shah, whether when I was awarded by Mr. Amit Shah or when I met Mr. Rahul Gandhi and was inducted into his party, subsequently, you know, again came back to AIDMK as a spokesperson for the government. To find myself in the main frame of politics is very difficult because I think very often with LGBT communities, they tell you can be an LGBT committee head, or you can talk about, you know, some kind of a fringe committee or a board which only discusses LGBT. And I wanted more than that. I am an LGBT individual, but I pay my taxes. I'm educated. I understand policy. So why should an LGBT individual always settle for, you know, an LGBT council or a transgender welfare board? I can talk about industry. I can talk about economy. I can talk about housing. So that's how I kind of negotiated my space as the national spokesperson for the government. And I think to find myself in that frame with the chief minister, with the prime minister, with the home minister, it's bloody hard. I mean, I've suffered bloody toes. People try to nudge me out. I've had scars on my body. I've had people troll me, put all kinds of memes. But then I think I've survived it. So I think the inner spirit that, you know, that makes you believe that you have a meaningful place has got me this far.
Thank you very much for that, Apsara. So staying with the theme then of acceptance, Manvinder, if we can come to you, you are in many ways, the highlight of the journey in India for most people. You had the courage to face yourself, to come out, to go through the Agni Pariksha almost of family rejecting you and then finally coming around to accepting you. What are the highlights along your journey, the lows that kept you going through this journey of acceptance, and what was your main learning along the way?
Yeah, good evening to all of you. I would say that though I am very proud to be part of this the Royal Indian heritage and proud to be Indian, but India is a country of paradox. On one hand, we have the Kama Sutra, which was written 500 years even before Jesus Christ was born, which has got an open depiction of a chapter on homosexuality. And on the other hand, we have the society who says that homosexuality never existed in India and it was imported. We have a culture which is called a homosocial culture, which is very well accepted in this country. And by homosocial culture, I mean that we have men and men together and women and women together, and that's accepted. But when there is a man and woman together, it is not accepted. I mean, you take examples in public. If you try to get a room for rent or a room in a hotel, two men can easily get a room, or two women can easily get a room. But I challenge you, if you can get a room in a hotel with a man and a woman, hundreds of questions asked. So that hypocrisy which has been prevailing in our society, and being grown up in a royal family and seeing in front of my eyes homosexuality happening, forced me to take this decision of coming out of just not of my closet, of my royal closet, but also telling the world that, hey, look, I am gay, and so what? I wanted a dialogue to start. We can't just keep mum over the things which are happening. We have to break the ice somewhere. We have to break the stereotypes which Apsara also mentioned about. And we need people to talk on a subject which is existing, and yet it is considered as a taboo, and there is so much of stigma and discrimination attached to us for no reason. So that triggered me to come out, and my journey went through a lot of ups and downs. But one thing which I always remembered whatever downfalls or anything which has happened in my life is that I stuck to my honesty. And I'm greatly inspired by people like Mahatma Gandhi and many others who have been honest and have won their paths. Because there is a saying that truth always wins. You can be as hypocritical as you want. You may not accept the truth, but truth will always win. So that is which kept me alive and also helped me pave my path.
Satyamev Jayate, truth will always prevail. Those are very inspiring words. They're all over India, perhaps even on a currency note. I want to just stay with that subject a little bit more, because you talked about the dichotomy of India being this very calm, peaceful, accepting country, and yet violence is only a second away, almost like a volcano. You never know when it erupts. The Maharashtrians have a saying about children being born in your family, and they say it's really good to have a Shivaji born in your family, but not in your own family. And I think in many ways, India, the violence comes when it's too close to home, when it comes within the family, and it's quite all right and acceptable when it has nothing to do with your own circles. Do you want to comment on that, Manvinder? Do you think that that is the experience that you've had, and how do we change that?
See, as I said, there is so much of lack of awareness, and we assume a lot of things, I always use this word. It's an Indian word which is called sanskar. We are groomed in a particular manner, and we are conditioned to be those kind of people as we are growing up. The cultural upbringing. So those are the things which need to change, and I'm also glad to say that it is changing. As the generations are going by, there is a change is being seen. So I think over a period of time, we will definitely find the change in the culture, the change in the behavior and the mindsets of a lot of people around us who are at present homophobic or maybe transphobic or whatever phobic. But definitely there is a sea change I've seen since the time I came out openly, and it's been now close to 15 or 16 years that I've come out, and I've seen that change happening, and I'm sure a lot of stereotypes will also get broken.
So it would seem that once you go through the Agni Pariksha of actually accepting yourself, acceptance from others might actually follow.
Yes.
Cyril, if I could come to you, you've seen it from both sides. You've come from a conservative Christian country, France, which is openly accepting now, but when you were born, perhaps less so, and through your teenage years, perhaps less so. You've seen the dichotomy of India that we've just discussed. You live a successful entrepreneurial life here and a successful gay married life in India. How has this journey been for you? And in your takeaways, how do we make the change towards acceptance from the experience of both cultures that you bring?
Okay, a lot of questions. Hi, everyone. First, so how was the journey of acceptance? I would say it's not been easy, but it's not been impossible also. At the beginning, I will take the example of my own experience with Keshav. You know, we met 13 years ago, and when I arrived at the beginning, you know, it was not so well perceived. His mother was worried. And little by little, by discussing, by also making realize to people that we have a normal lifestyle, that our lifestyle is not, it will not be loneliness, it will not be sickness. You know, there's a lot of people, they think like, okay, my son is gay, so he will be alone. He will get STD, AIDS, and die, and he will die alone of his AIDS. So basically, that's a lot of shortcut that people are taking, and the worry they have. And I think by also displaying that, in fact, we are absolutely like everyone. There's absolutely no difference between us and, like was saying, Apsara, why she would do something especially LGBT when she has so many other abilities. And hello, Apsara, by the way. And of course, and see, she's a very talented politician and working for the government. It's amazing, you know. So it's just to show to people, and unfortunately, we have to show to people. I mean, I don't see any straight people who have to show anything to people, but us somehow we have to show that we are good people and that we have good intention and that we are serious. And as you see, I'm a businessman, and so how is this journey? I would say it's a lot about communicating, and it's a lot about reaching the other and not be offended, and open the dialogue and show some maturity about it. And I think the message come across, you know, with my family-in-law, especially my mother-in-law, she's from another generation. This generation, they've not been so exposed to that. And it's a new step they have to take. And so you need to be with them to take this step and make them understand what it is, simply. And at the end, it's very successful. As you know, my mother-in-law, she became the wedding planner, basically. So from someone who was a little bit reluctant at the beginning, she was fully accepting, and now she's my mother. But it's true what we say, you know, it's like when it's reaching your family, it's always different. My mother or my mother-in-law have been surrounded by so many gay people in their life, but suddenly when it's their children, that's another story. So I guess, you know, I see those things changing also a lot. I see my parents, it's another generation. It was the generation also that's in the 80s. In the 80s, you know, there was a lot of actually AIDS going through Europe, going through everywhere. There was a lot of illness. It was not very well understood. So they've been worried with that, you know, but I don't think that the young generation, they perceive the thing differently. I think that the young people, for them, it's kind of irrelevant, in fact. You know, me in my office, I see my team, they're all young, and it's not even a subject. It's understood that everybody is welcome. And I mean, I don't even need to put policies for that. Of course, we are a small team, but why you should have different policies. In fact, everybody is the same. It's based on your talent, it's based on your kindness with other people, on your will to work for the company, on your innovation, and everybody has the same treatment, simply. But I would say also one thing, you know, I was hearing that we need to put some policies and to do all those things. But I think also that when you have a company, you need also to send a message. And this message is not only internal, it's also a message you need to send outside through advertising or through, it's a simple message. If you spread this message during the Pride Week, if you do something for Pride, I mean, Chronocare, us, we do that every year. Every year for the Pride Week, we launch some product red flag, we do something. So, you know, the message is there also that we celebrate this. And if we celebrate, first, necessarily you're welcome. So I think it's also, you know, it's a full message. It's also for a brand and for a company to say, we want to reach you also, and you are also our potential client, and you have also a place with our product or our service or whatever.
Thank you for that, Cyril. So the theme, I like what you're talking about. It is for everyone to be aware that people are normal and there is no difference between humans, no matter what their preferences are. Apsara, if we stay with that theme, it's actually really hard as a transgender to be considered normal, no matter anywhere in the world. In India, we have a long history of transgender people being accepted in society, being almost religious symbols, as you had said. And yet, in the initial discussion we had, you had challenged that in many ways, because what transgender individuals face in India is an economic violence, almost an exclusion from normal activities, forcing them into one or two different kinds of professions over thousands of years now. How do we change that? That's the biggest challenge. You have overcome that glass ceiling, but how do we do it, Apsara, across the country?
It's thank you, but I think when you break the glass ceiling, it's also important not to fix it back on. And I try not to fix it back on and help as many other transgender women as possible. To answer your question, I think when people say, "Oh, transgenders are like Mahalakshmi, transgenders are, you know, goddesses, and you know they have to bless children," essentially, it's economic strife that's actually making them go to weddings and bless people or beg at shops or dance at weddings. It's not because they want to do it. Even if they want to do it, I think they should have other options to survive. No matter how much you say transgender women are like goddesses and put them on a pedestal, essentially they have to go outside somebody's wedding and dance to make a living, which I think should not be the situation in India. We need to have medical subsidies. If transgender women trans women or trans men want to transition, we need to have medical subsidies so they can afford it without discrimination, without catcalling, without, if people want to convincingly change, we should have medical subsidies. We should have housing facilities, because when families ostracize trans individuals, they're left on the street. They're prone to sexual violence. They have no educational opportunities, so we need reservation education so that we can educate ourselves and actually get jobs. When you tell us don't beg, don't prostitute yourself, don't dance at weddings, then what are the options that we have? We have to feed ourselves. So it's very important for governments around the world to have medical subsidies, to have housing reservation, to have medical reservations. And this whole, we don't want to be goddesses. We just want to be regular individuals, everybody else. Don't call us Mahalakshmi. Don't give us 10 rupees and say, give it back to me and fall at our feet. That's not going to solve the issue. We need economic empowerment, and that's very essential.
Thank you for that, Apsara. So I'll come to the same theme, Manvendra, to you. Away from the gay pride parades in the city and the Twitter discussions that go on in the community, rural India has a very different way to deal with people who have chosen to be part of the LGBTQ community. Violence is quite normal from families. Violence is quite common from the village unit. And you, I think, have been motivated to run an NGO or to run a social service to be able to help include people in mainstream society so that they have economic independence and are able to move on in their lives. Can you talk us through why did you go down that route? What did you discover? What are the bits that, what's and all that are hard for India to face, but is the truth?
Yeah, I think it's a very relevant question. I founded the Lakshya Trust along with a few of my friends almost 20 years back, and we are the first community-based organization to start working in the state of Gujarat for the gay men, for the men having sex with men, and the transgender community. And we have come a long way since then. We have at the moment employed more than 250 people full-time, part-time across 3 cities. That itself is an empowerment because I mean, first of all, education has been a big issue. There are a lot of us who are not even matriculated. Forget about graduation, is something far apart. And then there is so much of stigma and discrimination attached to us when we kind of apply for jobs. You know, they were always discriminated. Our human rights have been violated. So we made a beginning of employing, and we call ourselves a community-based organization because we are the community and we work for the community. Our beneficiaries are also the community. And though in the beginning we did have a lot of issues with even getting employed and even the people to join us, because you know they had always the fear of being outed and all. And now that Lakshya has grown and Lakshya has won so many national and international awards, and even the government is funding us for our projects. Now there is a line. You know, we actually have to we advertise when there is a vacancy, and there is a long line waiting list of people who want to join us to get employed. So I think economic empowerment, what Apsara mentioned, is very, very relevant. Whether you're trans, you're gay or queer, whatever you are, because that itself gives you a lot of confidence in you. You're able to face the world. You're able to face the challenges of the homophobic society, because you're financially independent. You have your own resources. Another important thing which I keep telling my friends is that all those who want to come out to your parents, they need to first of all, you know, be detached from them, as we are all mentally conditioned to be attached to parents. And secondly, we need to be financially independent. These two are important key factors, because parents, unfortunately, always try and force us for marriage, and we easily get succumbed to marriage pressures because we are dependent on them. We live with them. We are dependent on our home, with regards to the home, with regards to the food, shelter, everything. And moment you open up your mouth and say, "Hey, mom, I'm gay," the mother or father will say, "No, you have to get married to a girl, even if you are gay." And because we are depending on them. But if you are financially on your own, then you can easily you know, prevent this marriage pressure and not get succumbed to these pressures and spoil your life and spoil the life of the girl you're getting married if you're gay. And the same goes with lesbians or for trans. So that is something which I'm trying to see, that how we can get more and more people employed, even self-employed for that matter, because many of us have a lot of skills. We need to just build those skills and see how they can commercially use those skills to earn a living and live a life of dignity and respect.
Thank you for that, Manvinder. It's an interesting comment. The Buddhists say, if you think you've attained moksha, come, let's go see your mother, because you never have detachment from your family. So it's an interesting comment that you make when you want to tell them that you are coming out, that you have to be detached. There is a question in the question box from the audience, and I'll pose it to all three. Any one of you can answer. Someone mentions that her son, who is a hotel management trainee, has come out and said he would prefer to have a career as a drag queen. And the question was, of course, beyond the difficulty in accepting whether that will be a long-term profession, she accepts that might be a mental block she's having herself, and seeks guidance on how to overcome that. And I think all three of you could have some interesting gyan on the subject. Sarah, would you like to go first?
Well, you should join the Lalit Hotel. Problem solved.
I think anybody who has a passion should be allowed to explore it. And I think parents will always have that hesitation of, you know, is this career going to be lucrative? Is this career going to be safe for you? But I think Keshav's story with what he's done with the drag culture in India has revolutionized that whole industry as something which is well-paying, which also celebrates the aesthetic and artistry of such incredible individuals that I met through the Lalit hotels. I feel the mother who's asked this question should let her son blossom, to find his own feet, to find his own wings. And I'm sure if it's not lucrative enough, the boy would find something else to do and pursue other careers. But I think if he wants to be a drag queen, I think you should allow him the chance to find his soul.
Yeah, I would like to add, first Cyril and Apsara have given the good suggestions. There is an organization in India which has been started by parents, and it's called Swikar. It's also called Rainbow Parents. So many times, these kind of situations come. I always ask the person who has these issues that, is your mother willing to be counseled? And if so, then if we can get a mother from the Swikar, I mean, because this organization consists of parents, mothers, fathers, uncles, grandparents who have accepted their children, grandchildren, nephews, nieces, etc., etc. So if a mother speaks to another mother, then it definitely makes a difference. I have been using this platform to educate a lot of parents, and a lot of mothers have now started accepting their children and have started accepting what the child likes to do or not to do in their life after they have spoken to these parents. So that could be another option which could be explored.
Thank you, Manvendra. We'll go to a rapid fire round of questions, and these are very probing. I'm sorry, my job is to ask the questions that the audience is asking, so I will pose them even if I disagree with them. But if we could go in a rapid fire round here. One of the questions is a problem in the workplace of allowing a transgender woman into a woman's restroom, similar to allowing a drag queen into a male restroom, and how to deal with that sort of mental makeup in a workplace, and what are your suggestions on dealing with that?
Yeah, we'll take the example of what my husband is doing at the hotel. Is simply there's some gender neutral bathroom, and I think the person should decide at what point he's comfortable to go to either this or this locker room. But after maybe it's the acceptance of the team, but people have to be also educated and make them feel comfortable. I mean, we had many successful stories like this at the Lalit Hotel with some transgender that transit to become man or woman. And at some point they switch from one locker room to another locker room, and they can use the gender neutral bathroom. But this needs to be available, of course.
Thank you. There is another question. Does anyone want to throw some down on this particular question before I go to the next one? No? Okay. And again, the next one, I'm asking because it's up on the chat, and I think there's a lot of people in the country who would probably feel that way. And so it's worth having everyone's opinion on this. And the question, I'll read it as written. How would you describe the overall quality of your closest relationship in terms of emotional intimacy, openness, honesty, support, tolerance, and acceptance? Have you ever had to negotiate? And I think there will always be a question of equalness in relationships. And so it's a question that perhaps you might want to delve into. Cyril or Apsara, I see you raised your hand.
I think it's true of any relationship, LGBTQIA or otherwise. Every relationship is a bit of give and take. And I think it's also very unfair for you to expect the other partner to understand everything about you and accept you wholly. And I think it's a journey. And I think all of us to engage the two people in the relationship, be it a romantic relationship or the entire family, whatever relationship it is, to holistically and organically be open to each other's suggestions as long as it doesn't violate anybody's space. And I think to have that open line of communication is very important. When I decided to become a woman, it's a long journey. You as a boy to become a woman, it's many stages to becoming a woman. During that stage of transforming from a boy to a girl, you have romantic relationships. Your family is seeing you transform, so their reaction to you itself is very different. And at each stage, I've had to explain, I've had to kind of, if I was rebellious and if I ran away from home and if I chose to do it on my own with friends, perhaps it could have been easier. But for me, it was very important to have that communication, to have honesty, to have the courage to do it with family, to do it with whoever I was romantically involved with, to have open lines of communication, because your levels of exposure, their levels of exposure are very different. You see your life very differently. can't expect everybody to accept you and see it that way. I think there's a lot of negotiation, communication that's needed.
Thanks, Apsara. Manvendra, one of the other questions is, whilst an organization can have very good policies to promote equality, inclusion, and acceptance, once employees are outside the doors of the organization, life is different. So how can organizations, in your experience from all the work you've done with Lakshya, protect employees who come out beyond the workplace in their daily lives?
See, it is very important to maintain confidentiality. A lot of times, where like when you out, you come out or you talk about your issues, it's like there always a fear that oh, so and so will come to know, and then what will happen. So I think it's important to respect that person's sexuality, and it's also important to respect that person's private space, and maintain that, assure that person of confidentiality and trust. That's very important, according to me.
Cyril, would you like to add to that question?
Well, that's true. Not everyone can be very confident, and so yes, some people, they have to stay quiet, unfortunately, because yes, it's not easy for everyone. I mean, and India and the country is not only the capital, it's like, me, I'm from Paris. I mean, it's easy to be gay in Paris. It's easier to be gay in Delhi than you would be in a small town where maybe people are more narrow-minded. So yes, just remain private and stay safe. More importantly.
I have something to add.
Yes, please, Apsara.
Raman, actually, you pointed out how economic empowerment can change a lot of confidence levels and the will to survive. So we do something called the Dignity Project, which I've curated in Tamil Nadu, where we give food carts along with provisions and utensils to trans women who are completely almost below the poverty line, who are not into the flesh trade, who are above a certain age, who can't afford their medical bills, who've been disowned by family, who are only used to begging. And I realized after they start, working on these food carts, or we even do laundry setups for them, or even chicken coops. So any of these small businesses that we set up for them, after 6 months, they come back to me and tell me, now my family's accepted me back. I am building a house for my brother. I am getting my younger brother married. So I feel a lot of the acceptance that comes around for LGBT individuals, especially in the lower economic strata, has to do a lot with the earning capacity of that member. I think economic empowerment builds confidence, also reunites them with families.
Thanks, Apsara. Sure. Last question comes to you, Cyril. You actually named in the question, and that is, what is the single most important thing you've done within your organization to create more inclusion and acceptance?
For my own company?
Yes, that's right.
I would say just set the example of be yourself, be proud of you do, be happy to come to work. And me, it's a small company, so we don't have such a complex HR policy. I can just set the trail and give the example. And you arrive in my office, you have a picture of me and my husband in Indian Express the day we did the petition for 377. So I think it's there, simply set the example and free, and hopefully I can inspire some people to have the same life, and you're right, to be successful, also bring them some freedom and some confidence, and that's why that's the only thing I can do. But I don't think I can do more. Huh? I don't think somebody has more LGBT boss than me. Huh?
Excellent. In closing, I'm going to ask you a rapid fire question, and that is, if you can say in one sentence, what do you think we need to do as people, as a country, as workplaces, as a nation, to foster more acceptance? That being the theme for today. What do we need to do to foster more acceptance, as you're closing one message to everybody listening?
I would say let's go back to the roots of Indian culture. I mean, I perceive as French, I perceive Indian culture as a culture full of acceptance, diversity. So I think it's just to go back to that. I mean, it's a country of Kama Sutra. It's a country of thousand landscape, of thousand culture, thousand gods. So I would say let's just go back to the roots of what is Indian culture, and it's only acceptance and love, but much more than French culture, I would even say.
So be conscious about diversity, and go back to our roots and the consciousness of diversity. Thank you.
Diversity is beautiful.
Thank you. Apsara, your one message?
I would say everybody is God's child. Please don't penalize us or don't discriminate us for being different. I think difference adds a very interesting dimension to a democracy. I think all kinds of people should be celebrated. Every kind of love is equal, and every kind of love should be celebrated, not just be silenced. And I finally would like to say that everybody has an aspiration for themselves. Let everybody's aspiration bloom. That's the true spirit of democracy.
Thank you very much, Apsara. And finally, Manvendra, what is your one message on acceptance?
I would be very short. Love yourself.
Very powerful. Love yourself. That was, I guess, the big learning of coming out, acceptance and love yourself. It has been a privilege to be on the panel with you. And I am taking away a lot of personal learnings myself. I'm sure everybody who was listening today would be doing the same. For me, my main key takeaway was your closing messages. But in the end, it all comes down to we are all normal, and we must accept ourselves as being normal for the world to accept ourselves as being normal.
Thank you for being such a wonderful moderator, because I think you gave us all enough time to speak, and I think you led it in such a beautiful way. So, Ravin, thank you so much for being such a wonderful moderator.
True.
Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Thank you, Cyril. Thank you, Manvendra. I do hope to be able to meet you sometime soon. Back to you, Tracy at IFCCI. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ravin, Cyril, Apsara, and Prince Goel. This was truly a great session. We now move on to the last session of our program for today with an interesting panel discussion on equal opportunity and inclusion of the LGBT community at the workspace. I would like to welcome our moderator, Vinay Joy, partner Khaitan & Co., and our fellow panelist, Ms. Swapna Desai, Head Human Resource, BNP Paribas, India, Gayatri Ramamurthy, Head DNI Capgemini, India, Pradeep Chadwa, HR Director, Sodexo On-Site Services, India, and Mr. Thibu Khani, Managing Director, South Asia, Managing Director and CEO, Pernod Ricard, India. Before this, we would like to play a short video by Pernod Ricard. My colleague Tessie will play the video.
Hateism, anti-gayism,
genderism,
casteism,
chauvinism, shortism, whiteism,
sexism,
nepotism, fascism,
shamism,
fatism,
classism,
leftism, rightism, centrism, racism,
regionalism, casteism,
Dalism, blackism, classism, and communalism, veganism and rationalism, hypersensitivism. Let's uncolor all the isms of the world.
Thank you, Tessie. Over to you. Over to you, Vinay. We cannot hear you, Vinay. No, not yet audible, Vinay.
Vinay, just make the red green. Your speaker would be on red, just make it green. Hit it.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry, apologies for that. I think we're still adjusting to the virtual world when it comes to these matters. But thank you everyone for joining us today. I think we've had a couple of excellent sessions. I'm not really sure how how much more interesting we're going to be making this. I think the topic that we have today for our panel, of course, is equal opportunity and inclusion of the LGBTQ community in the workplace. And to that extent, it's structured more as a discussion amongst corporates for regular employees working in the workplace, what can be done. I think the one thing before I sort of get into our panel, of course, was I thought the deputy head of mission, Ms. Purkarescu's comment that change doesn't come; you need to make it happen. I think those are very, very powerful words. I thought very important in our world today. So I think one thing, and I think the previous panels, of course, we saw Parmesh talk about the benefits of having diversity, recruiting people from the community. But I have to tell you that in my day-to-day work, I do come across multiple companies. I speak with various people. A lot of times, I am confronted with the question that why should corporates implement such changes? Sorry. Why corporates should implement policies for diversity? What is the tangible benefit it brings? It's not something that you can measure on your balance sheet. So how do you account for it? And since a lot of you are head the HR function in your respective companies, head the D&I functions at your companies, I just thought maybe I could get a preliminary view from at least some of you, or maybe Gayatri, we'll just start off with you, just to get your thoughts on that.
Hi, thank you, Vinay, and a very good evening to all of you, my co-panelists and people who are listening in. I think when we talk the business case of inclusion, the first thing we should not be is defensive. By being defensive, what we essentially do is to, we don't push the case right? So to tell corporate and to make it a business case is just about positioning not only the direct benefits of this, but the intangible benefits, as you rightly called out. Through our journey of inclusion over the past several years, we have continuously committed to publishing data, because really when data comes to the table, transparent, true data, it makes a huge shift in thinking among business people. If you have to talk about the business case, it's simply about saying, do you want to see your employees engaged? Given that an IT company like ours, Capgemini is an IT consulting company, how our talent is the most important and most critical element for us, and having them engaged at the workplace, and even in this digital era, is absolutely crucial. So inclusion is really a business prerogative, as simple as that.
Sure, thanks, Gayatri. Thibaut, maybe if I just come to you, given that you lead, you're the managing director of South Asia operations for Pernod. I just wanted to understand, from a business perspective, since how do you look at implementation of such programs to bring in people from various cultures? How important do you think that is for you? Thibaut, are you able to hear me? Okay, maybe some difficulty with the connectivity. Maybe I'll just come back to Swapna. Okay, sorry.
But I can hear you if you can hear me. It's just a little bit challenging. I don't know why, to be honest, but I know I'm far away to find. So on the organization, can you hear me well?
It keeps coming in and out, Thibaut.
Okay, so let me disconnect and if it's working better, and I'll let somebody else answer the question first.
Sure. Swapna, maybe from your experience, at BNP, if you could just sort of let us, what your thoughts are on about such programs.
Sure, of course. So, good evening, everybody. As Gayatri rightly mentioned, there are obviously enough business cases, enough studies that are being done to show that diverse organizations are far more productive. But I think if you look at it, that's the commercial side of it. But if you look at it from what an organization stands for, so look at, if I talk from BNP Paribas' perspective, we're a bank for the changing world. And the world is changing, and of course we're a global organization, with a footprint in many countries, 71 actually, and it's very important for us to recognize that there is going to be diversity in the organization, and so inclusivity is very, very essential when you're talking about having a global footprint. So I think there is the whole business case of it, but there's also about being responsible employers, and one of our values is about openness and about really being respectful at the workplace. So we have a value of being a good place to work, and then that's really about showing respect for everyone who is in the workplace. So for us, inclusivity is extremely important, and it's one of the key sort of drivers and things that we stand up for right from our senior leadership.
Thanks, Swapna. Thibaut, are you able to come back to us?
Thibaut, it may help if you want to switch off your video. Your audio may be more clearer then.
Yes, I can try that.
Yeah, this is better.
Can you hear me now or not?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Thibaut. Apologies. I think he was still facing some difficulties. Maybe I'll just move to a slightly different question to Pradeep. And Pradeep, I think given the nature of the workforce that your company has, I just wanted to understand, in these times, D&I efforts of any nature, take time to sort of percolate through an organization. It's sort of difficult to sort of build that culture. And in a company like yours with a very large workforce, with a majority blue-collar workforce, if I may call it that, how can D&I programs be a priority for a company like yours at this time? Given that there is so much market uncertainty at this time. We've just had COVID. A lot of businesses have suffered greatly on account of that. So how do you make this a priority? Do you think it's still something that needs to be followed, or can it be on the back burner for the moment?
No, I would certainly see D&I and especially inclusion of LGBT as a strong business case, specifically in my own company, not only in India, but globally. We are present in almost 83 countries, and so India itself is almost 56,000 people organization. And when you have such a large opportunity of including LGBT and other employees, and when we recruit at a range of around 25,000 people every year, so we do feel that building that right culture before we really bring them in the organization is very, very crucial. And we have a program called Spirit of Inclusion, which actually every manager needs to be certified and trained under this program, so that they understand, they celebrate, and they value and they respect diversity as an important element in the organization. Number two, as HR team, many of the HR colleagues are actually struggling for talent. On one side, they say that they don't get talent. Another side, there's an entire community which is completely, deprived and they're out of it. So there is some disconnect, and I think somebody needs to take the ownership. Somebody needs to take the right kind of, processes at this point of time, and set up the right kind of processes at this point of time.
Great. Thanks for that, Pradeep. Thibaut, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. I just switched. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Loud and clear.
Sorry for this mess.
So, no problem. Thibaut, maybe I'll just come back to you with that question at this stage. In terms of, as the MD of operations for your company, how important do you think D&I programs are, and do you think it brings any particular tangible benefits to your business?
Yeah, well, the first thing, we are a consumer good company in Pernod Ricard. So naturally, the first thing we want to try to reflect is our consumer profile. And the best way to work and go after our consumers is to ensure that internally, within the organization, we have the same pool and the same representation. So normally, in this context, considering what India is about, diversity is a must for an organization like Pernod Ricard. And it should not be too much biased with the perception that alcohol industry might be, which is a man-centric organization, centric business. So which is a must globally, obviously, but even more in India, and considering the history of India, the history of what alcohol represents in India. So yes, for us today, and probably as we go forward even more, the diversity side is fundamental. So this is what about it. And to be very clear, we are probably late as far as Pernod Ricard is concerned. So we need to catch up on this, because again, just specifically on the woman and the gender diversity, woman is an increasing consumer pool for within our industry, and today it is underrepresented in the organization.
Great, thanks, Thibaut. And obviously there is I suppose, a business case to be made given the nature of the business that your company is in. But maybe if I just come back to the rest of the panelists here. Gayatri, for example, if I could just ask you, why this business of diversity? I mean, of course, you spoke about, and some of the other panelists spoke about the benefits of it as well. But would there be any other reason why you would want to demonstrate that, why diversity is important to, say, Capgemini as a company? Why would that be so important for you to showcase? Because as things stand, you are one of the largest IT consulting companies in the world. You're known to be a great employer. People would, in any event, like to come and join up with you. So why would this be important for you?
So Vinay, your questions and your answers are all there. You answered your questions, Vinay. But you're absolutely right. When multiculturalism, it's not about just saying, okay, you have a certain culture based on, as an individual, based on the way you grew up, the way you were associated, the way you got educated, the way your family and faith values are. And that's the way you have to lead life. It's about evolving continuously as individuals. And as individuals evolve, so does a group of people which form an organization. So in Capgemini, we are, as you said, in about 50 countries. And culture is already inherent in this extremely diverse languages, people, thoughts, ideas. So when you, as an organization, come together to deliver to your client and engage your stakeholders, you absolutely must ensure that everybody feels that this space belongs to them. And that can only happen if you build that culture, which is an enabling culture of inclusion. The sense of joining, and many leaders have joined us during the COVID times. They were saying it's just so surprising that in this digital world where we're not having in-person connects, you still, as an organization, stretch to ensure that we feel enveloped. Through our growth, both organically and inorganically, I think the edifice of how we want to be seen, we want to be, positioned. It's a vision larger than just an organization's top line. That's the way I would look at that.
Sure, thanks, Gayatri. And I think that brings to an important point about building culture in organizations. Now, I would say, I think something that came up earlier in the panel discussions as well, that, some of us, I think Suhan had brought it up, that, I think I'm an 80s child myself. And I think you were brought up in a particular, way, or, there was a particular culture that you sort of saw. And I think now things are potentially a lot more open. I think over the last, I would say, 5-6 years, there has been rapid growth in corporates wanting to sort of adopt these policies, seem to be more open as well. So in that regard, maybe I'll just come to you, because there's a wide question which I'll want to get responses from all the panelists on. Is what are your respective companies doing about this? What are the sort of initiatives that you are taking? And of course, in terms of culture building, how are you sort of prompting that? Is it a top-down action? Are you involving? Are there some sort of trainings? Maybe if I can just come to Swapna first, maybe if you can just talk about what efforts you're taking, and then maybe I'll go around with all the other panelists as well.
Thanks, Vinay. So you're right. I think there are various elements to building an inclusive culture. And like you rightly said, it all firstly begins from what the philosophy and the value of the organization stands for. As far as BNP Paribas is concerned, as I mentioned earlier, we have two key values. One is on, being a great place to work, a good place to work, which is really about respecting everybody, building a culture of openness. And it really starts from the top. Right. So if I can just give you an example, our group CEO, John Laura Bonafé, he has been for the 4th year, consecutive year, he's among the 10 executives on the outstanding LGBT and allied executive list. In fact, he was in 2020 put up as the LGBT role model, which says a lot in terms of our commitment specifically to LGBT. But of course, for us, diversity and inclusion is broader. We talk about, not essentially discrimination on any sort of race, religion, gender, age. So it's all inbuilt in our code of conduct. And more closer home. So when I look at Asia Pacific or I look at India, there is a very strong commitment starting from the top. So whether it's our APAC management or the local Indian management that we have, we're committed to very specific areas of inclusion. And in India specifically, we've chosen to focus on 3 pillars, which is on gender diversity, LGBT, and disability, or what we refer to as accessibility within our system. So I think a lot of that begins from the top, and then it all boils down to how do you slowly change culture amongst your employees. A lot of that has to do with sensitization, that is awareness, training programs, things like unconscious bias, ensuring people have frameworks that they can refer to. So you create an environment where they have redressal mechanisms, grievance procedures if they're not treated well, and also networks. So for example, for the LGBT community, we do have the Pride Network, which we very, very proudly launched in 2019 in India. And today I'm very, very proud to say we've already got 300 allies in our system, and it's growing. The number is growing as we speak. So that's brilliant. That's a great show of solidarity to the LGBT community, because they know they have a safe harbor where they can talk, reach out to people. We also have the HR community. The way we're structured, we have business partners where people can reach out and talk to if they have issues or they're concerned. And then of course there's a whole area of creating support. So apart from the networks internally, we also have external mechanisms. Like for example, we've created an employee assistance program, which is a counseling service for our staff where they can reach out if they need help. So I think it's a journey that one goes through in an organization. Starts from the top in terms of building a commitment to the cause, and then slowly building around the framework in terms of awareness, frameworks, as somebody said, policies, infrastructure. We've also invested recently in our new premises in gender neutral or rather unisex washrooms as well. So those are all the elements that you slowly start building to help people recognize that this is an inclusive workplace.
Thanks, Swapna. That's quite comprehensive, and that's great for your organization. Pradeep, if I may come to you, if you could sort of tell us about your organization as well.
Certainly. I would probably talk about more in action in terms of because what happens that the companies have a great vision and they have the policies and they have great programs, but the infrastructure, the ecosystem is not available. So I'll just touch upon a few of them. I think Swapna also spoke about some of them. So example, we have a specially reskilling program. So what happens that we need to invest if we suppose recruit a person from LGBT community, then we need to rescale them for the future jobs so that we continuously invest them. The second thing is that we have some partners, associate partners. We give our training programs to them so that they train the community, and then we recruit them from these partners. Sometimes we also give access of all the jobs, all the vacancies to these partners as kind of a they have a login access, and they can share all the vacancies, and they can actually people LGBT community can choose specific role actually which they would like to have aspiration, rather than we just put them into a particular canned profile. And yes, the employee assistance program where the counselors are available, and we have Speak Up wherein there is an independent agency which actually manages grievances related to that, so that the confidence is there in terms of the confidentiality. Then not only HR but even supply chain is partnering with it, and supply chain has an entire partner ecosystem which comes from this community. So it's not only about providing them the opportunity, but actually creating kind of a partner ecosystem also. Like we actually our drinking water is supported by a company called Kinair, and we in the north of India the entire drinking water is supplied by them, and so many we have other such kind of supply chain partners are also there. And yes, I think in today's environment mental health is another issue. All of us are actually struggling with that, and we need to have a special focus with LGBT community, because they're further vulnerable. And sorry for saying that they're further, but basically that's reality in India, and we are actually grappling with that. So hence, do we have the support system like mentoring support? Are we coaching and empowering managers? How do they support them, and how do they empower them in terms of skilling them and training them? So it actually encompasses all those things which we need to do. So the entire ecosystem has to continuously support and take them to the next level. That's what my.
Sure. Thanks, Pradeep. And I think you made some great points in terms of, it's one thing to, of course, look after your employees, but also to sort of create that larger ecosystem. I think that's a very important point. Gayatri, I know you run one of the leading D&I initiatives, in companies that we see. So maybe if you could just sort of talk about that.
I think Sapna and Pradeep explained very beautifully that, one is the employees and the other is enveloping all our stakeholders, including the supply network. The way in Capgemini we've been driving this over the years is to look at structured approach when it comes to LGBTQIA inclusion. We have adoption, adaptation, absorption, and evangelism. These are our 4 pillars. Adoption is about ensuring that the dialogues continue, and this helps to reduce stereotyping, bias. We have a program called Culture, Brain, and Bias. And this program, actually, we were training, it was a half-a-day training module that we would execute for our managers. The people manager is the entry-level managerial community. Unfortunately, with the lockdown, we started doing it into digital, and it moved into a 90-minute module. We don't stop, we still continue that. And it's an ask by the business units themselves saying, you better make sure that you've completed this module. It helps people, bias per se is not a bad word. It's just that you need to bring it to your conscious level of thinking to say, listen, your brain has been hardwired in a particular way. Can you rewire your brain and adjust your thinking towards the same experience that you had could have been just a one time. Why don't you reframe your thinking? Adaptation is all about policy support, whether it is ensuring insurance coverage, of course, infrastructural support like gender restrooms, which are in every building, in every location we are in India, across 120 buildings or so. Everywhere we have them to ensure support for employees. More so when it comes to leave, it comes to how does the individual experience the process of SRS, medically called sex reassignment surgery, and we call it gender affirmation surgery. And what is it that is required for the individual to resume life and work? It's an extremely emotional, physically exhausting process, and we believe that just a policy doesn't help. It's about how you translate that policy. Praveen touched about absorption. Yes, we look at inclusion from not just engaging with our clients, and we have these conversations across, identified clients. It's not just about employees, it's also about a supplier network, and we ensure that our supplier policy is inclusive. Evangelism is what, this is one such example, and it's very, very important that we call out, allies who are vocal, vociferous, and noisy, because it's very important for cisgender to understand that they might be the privileged, but privileges are often assumed among the privileged. So it's very important to ensure that allies come out and speak vocally and support inclusion.
Sure. Thanks, Gayatri. Thanks for that. I'll just come to Thibaut and maybe a slight twist on that question, Thibaut. In terms of, obviously a lot of companies in India are just about coming to adopt these programs to sort of introduce them. And one of the things, of course, is, rather than just having, policies in place, you also want them to be effective. It's not just lip service that you're looking to provide. So, I mean, obviously, as someone who is not from India, but is managing a business in India, are there some difficulties that you see in sort of implementing these programs in your company in India?
Well, that's a very good question, Vinay. And my overall thinking is that it's not only to put policies in place, it's about how you will get them implemented and what will be the actions on the back of them. And naturally, unfortunately, there would be a lot of resistance in any organization, in my view, and specifically in India. And I personally believe that our organization will face and is facing a lot of resistance on that front. So going back to all what we are hearing and saying, all the ecosystem you are creating around the organization from within and around, all the work on the culture of the organization, we are very important. We are blessed because we also have a lot of messages through our brands and through what we want to convey to consumers, either the brand messaging about being true to yourself in some brands, about an open world on Absolute, as an example, about the history we have behind the brand. So about the conviviality mindset, which is also about being all together, and the tolerance message that we want to give through our brands. And we want the organization from within also to live what we are seeing with our brands, being our international portfolio or our local portfolio of brands. So the resistance is pretty high, naturally speaking, I think, because of the history, because of also our industry. Time we are seeing a lot of progress in the environment, in the ecosystems as a whole, and that's the very positive. I was in India, let's say some 15 years ago in my first stint, and from what it was 15 years ago to what it is today, I really see a lot of differences in the entire environment and on the diversity topic as well. Although I still believe it is still at an early stage, and there is still a huge amount of work to be done. And it will not be the sum of individual companies, but the overall pool of the corporation and ideally public sector as well to raise the voice on diversity and the need for diversity. But again, there is a lot of hope from what I'm seeing, and the resistance step by step. You are bringing allies on your side, you are bringing voices on your side. The diversity, and I'm totally convinced that on top of the policies, as long as you keep bringing positive momentum on diversity, focus, you keep working on the culture, and you have an extremely strong voice from the top that is going against preconceived ideas, biases, and resistance, then you will definitely achieve results on that front. And inclusion, obviously, is probably the most important topic. We have been discussing this all the way through the panelists today in the various ones. Inclusion and what you do and the concrete actions you are doing is very important, obviously.
Sure. Well, thanks, Thibaut. I think I'm conscious, of course, of the time, but one question that I wanted to ask, and it also stems from the previous panel where both Apsara sort of talked about getting stereotyped into certain roles. And I think Ravin also mentioning about, how there's almost economic violence in terms of how they're excluded from certain roles. So in your own sort of companies, with respect to how you go about your hiring practices, is it now at a stage where you have made that a priority as well in terms of checking for their experience in sort of either working in such programs, being around such programs, or how do you sort of work that into job descriptions? Is that something you do only for specific roles? Is that something that you look at largely? Maybe if I could just get some thoughts from the panelists. Swapna, maybe from you.
So Vinay, as far as we're concerned, we're very clearly an employer of equal opportunity. So we welcome all applications. For us, what's important, the most important thing is the relevant work experience. Everything else is actually secondary. Whether it's gender, age, background, it's not important. The core essence of what we look for in a person, whether they have the experience, they have the competence, they have the ability to do the job. So that's something that is something that we're also training our people in. So I think somebody talked about unconscious bias in one of the panels, and that's something that we do very, very seriously in our environment, where it is a program that is run for our employees, our managers, people who are in the hiring process as well. And that is exactly as I think it was Gayatri was talking. It's not about not having biases, is about being aware of one's biases and really ensuring that they're not coming in the forefront of any decision making, whether it's at hiring or any other process that you follow in the organization. And that's something that we constantly push forward. And I think separately, we also have a very strong code of conduct, which really talks about zero tolerance for any sort of discrimination or harassment. So whether it's at the time of recruitment or internally in any of our practices, we take that very seriously, and there are some very, very strong procedures in place to ensure that that code of conduct is followed.
Sure. Thanks. I think also, just picking on from what Apsara had said, because often members, say from the trans community, get stereotyped into certain roles, and you then necessarily may not even come with a lot of experience into certain roles. Now, Pradeep, I'll just come to you. You talked about sort of reskilling, members from the community. Is that what it is designed for, to sort of make them, you look out for them so that you can hire them and then sort of train them for the job? Is that part of what you're doing?
Yeah, I'll tell you what we do. And actually, I was listening very carefully to the previous panel also, and I know while most of our companies, we have great policies, but still, we have not been able to make the dent in and not been able to make the impact. So it means that whatever we are doing is either not enough or we are not doing the right thing. These two things actually comes into the mind. And somewhere, suppose if as a HR person, if I say that, I need a particular kind of experience, then if those experiences are not there with the LGBT community or specific, then how are we going to give them those opportunities? How are they going to give those experiences? The experiences are not given to them. Basically, going to be, kind of a fit talent in the market. And that's the reason because Sodexo operates we have more than 1,000 job profiles. So what we did, we kept all these jobs open in the market, and all the there are some train and hire partners who work closely with us. These partners knows very well what kind of jobs we hire for, and those jobs they can see and download the job descriptions from our website and everything. So we give them 3 months, 6 months advance, kind of a planning that is going to be, our typical hiring. The hiring requirement is going to be this. We use something called predictive churn analysis by, and giving them those. These partners, they train them on those specific jobs, and then actually, then we go there after 3 months, after 6 months, depending upon a technical job. Is there something else? Is that we recruit them. So that is one thing. Number two, we need to use a different mode, whether suppose snowball sampling, the way the technique is used, wherein you reach out to one person and then you take the reference. So that's the way we actually get a snowball effect, and then we reach out to the larger LGBT community, because they are not available. I as a HR, I really struggle sometimes. I want to hire a resource and I don't get those resources. So we need to use a different ways of reaching out to the resources. And traditional and the current ways of working is not going to help us. And I completely agree with the previous panelists in the kind of all those stereotypes and other things are there. And while we deal with them, but certainly there are companies who wants to hire, but they need to look into a different way of doing it. That's what I think.
Great. Thanks, Pradeep. Maybe I'll just come to my last question before I leave the floor open for Q&A. And I think this is more from, again, I think what I talked about in terms of this is still a new process for a lot of companies. And so, Gayatri, maybe I'll just start with you on this. In terms of developing, what would be your advice to say new companies who are looking to sort of implement such programs, who don't currently have such programs in place? Obviously, it's a huge area. You can't sort of have everything on day one. So what would be your advice to, say, someone leading a D&I initiative, or someone in your position in a company, as to where they should sort of begin with? What are some of the tips that you have learned along the way? Or what would you sort of pass on?
So Vinay, just a couple of things when it comes to trans community. It's not true that all of them are from, extremely oppressed and social backgrounds. We have people in the system who are going through gender affirmation surgery and who are from economically privileged backgrounds. Do they still face stigma and face experiences which are not inclusive? Absolutely. Is that something we as humanity should allow? No. Should we be vocal about these discriminations and call it out? Yes. So, we know Indian history. Over the years, we never had an issue, right, with having, in fact, in the Muslim era, all the women's quarters were protected by them. So I think British stepped in and decided that this was unnatural. So to me, it's highly, it's very disappointing that a rich Indian culture needed to go through 300 years of British Raj and to be told that, what we're doing is unnatural. So it's not unnatural. It's been in the system and it's been very much part of Indian rich culture and heritage. So for me, yes, a business case, go with data. There is so much research in this space today compared to, say, even 5-7 years ago, especially after the strike down on, the strike down of Article 377 on September 6, 2018. There's so much research. So, and there's so much data published. So go with the business case and take little steps. It's okay. But start talking. It's not about policies. It's about practices. It's about opening up and having these conversations which are uncomfortable to ensure that more people feel comfortable coming out. And we start respecting these diverse, dimensions of society. Thank you, Vinay.
Sure. Thanks, Gayatri. I was going to come to Thibaut, but I think he's facing some network difficulties. Swapna, maybe just a couple of lines on what your advice would be to sort of how to go about implementing such a program.
So, Vinay, I think it's a journey, and I think you have to look at it step by step. So I think it's firstly very, very important to have walking the talk. So it's very important that it starts from the top. There has to be a lot of commitment to inclusiveness. And then I think it's all about building slowly a cultural mindset shift in terms of how do we really, tackle a lot of the stigma or issues that come up with these communities, building awareness, sensitization programs, and slowly building, as Gayatri very rightly said, yes, there's policies, but it's really about your practices and how do you really implement that into reality? How do we really source profiles, which are not easily available in the market, and really how do you get them? So we did that, for example, in our disability focus. We've actually gone and proactively looked at profiles that we could hire and have on the job. So similarly, how do you actually go out there and look at proactively for profiles? So I think it's a step-by-step cultural process which you build with different elements that you have to put together, which includes an environment, it includes frameworks, policies, practices, and most importantly, a lot of sensitization, communication, openness to talk about various topics that people may be afraid to come to the table with.
Sure. Thanks, Swapna. And Pradeep, maybe I'll just finish with you. Maybe just some of your thoughts on, how should companies sort of build such programs from scratch?
Certainly, actually, the entire ecosystem has to be made ready, starting from culture building, starting from sensitizing to the leadership, actually leadership buy-in and actually leadership seeing that as a business case, and preparing those business case, doing those researches, convincing them, and spending a good amount of time. Number two, changing the status quo, because what is done today, the way we are doing hiring, the way we are doing training, or maybe our job descriptions, the roles which we look into, we need to look into changing the status quo also, and need to look into how we can evolve the current practice and we can become better and better. Third thing is let's not limit only to HR in terms of giving them the employment opportunities or something. We need to work in terms of entrepreneurship, generation of entrepreneurship also, enhance supply chain or other such departments to be plug in, and we need to ensure that we create entrepreneurship opportunity, because there is there are organizations who spends maybe a fraction of the money into human resources, but the large sum of money is spent on other resources also. How do we create those things needs to be seen, and those to be supported. And last thing is about that the talent is not available, as I told you, readily. So we need to really step up the entire thing from the grassroots only, because the things are very difficult at the ground level, and people who are really struggling, and then again they are struggling from family side, then later on economic side, and now from the job side also. So I think the entire support system has to go completely from the bottom up at the ground level, and then we move forward upward. That will help.
Thanks, Pradeep. I think we have one question from the audience, and I'll just read that out, and maybe whoever the panelists wants to sort of take this up, please feel free to go. You can always have strong leadership push, but how do you escape the compliance trap? How do you educate employees across the spectrum and institutionalize the grounds up movement for inclusion? I think really, to my mind, a lot of that is about how do you sort of build that culture? How do you sort of make it relevant for employees, that it's not just a tick in the box exercise, but sort of get them involved. Maybe if just one of you wants to have a go at this question. I think we've largely covered it as part of our panel, but maybe if someone just wants to take this up.
I think, Vinay, the way we have to look at this is where does the employee connect? Is there an emotional connect to something which is over and above the role? So if you as an individual would like to work in an organization, you are obviously looking at the role that you're going to deliver. But where do you build those relationships beyond your role? There has to be a larger, I guess the best thing to call it is just cause. Sinek, in his recent book on infinite mindsets, calls it just cause. All of us as individuals have to have a just cause. And if that is the larger vision with which we operate in life, empathy naturally flows in. And with empathy comes the need to want to drive change, to want to see a more equal opportunity society. You want to see everybody from different dimensions and diversity come in and have that equal opportunity.
Lovely. Thanks, Gayatri.
Pradeep? Let me just add on, what happens typically, many of these diversity inclusion initiatives are led by sometime the leadership team, and sometime the HR team or something else. So what in Sodexo we have done a small step, maybe it can be a clue to some of the organization. So we have some committees, we have some gender and even LGBT. We have some groups are there which are actually a good mix of employees, leaders at the ground level, the frontline leaders, and that was it's not completely driven by HR or a particular department or leadership. It is driven, that strategy is prepared by them. It is actually the entire spirit of the program is lived and implemented by them. So what happens that when they themselves are doing it, then they don't see this program as something which is top-down program. And hence, when others see them doing a big difference in their work life and creating this, when they talk about these things, and employees are given platform to talk about these initiatives, automatically the entire culture comes up. Otherwise, if it's only top down, then probably people will just listen it as a great, probably somebody has spoken a great, statement or something, and then it is forgotten. But if it is truly done and implemented by employees, and the committee is not of HR, but the employees who actually take care of these things. We have 2-3 such programs are there which are completely owned by them, led by them. they design the program and they implement the things. I think that way the ownership comes. That's what I can see. But yes, I think many other ways you can do it, and I think Sapna would have some more ideas on it.
Thanks, Pradeep. I think the empowerment angle is very important. Swapna, please go on.
No. So in fact, I was going to echo what Pradeep said, because indeed what he says is very similar to what we've done. We have our own networks of employees, and it's a mix of employees and sponsors and leaders. So for example, you have Pride, and we have Mixity for our women, and these are the ones who drive a lot of programs. So it's not just seen as an HR or a management-driven initiative. I think it's not just restricted to the organization. For example, some of these committees actually take it out. So I know, for example, our Pride committee is also looking how they can engage with the community outside the bank to kind of get more engaged and sensitization outside in the community. So I think there are different ways in which you can get employees to get involved, to build that sensitivity and awareness, and slowly build a culture which is naturally inclusive rather than which is messaging inclusiveness.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for that, Swapna. I think we're out of time. Thank you to Gayatri, Swapna, Pradeep, and Thibaut for all their insights. I'm sure it'll be very helpful for the audience who's participated today to sort of take back to their respective organizations and to add to the movement that they might already have in place, or to sort of get one going. I think these are very insightful sort of conversation that was. Thank you, everyone. Back to you.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vinay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Vinay. Thank you, everyone. We thank you, everybody, for being part of this event. May I now request Mr. Bruno Bronkpa to please give the closing remarks.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Tracy. First of all, I would like to thank warmly all the panelists for sharing their time, energy, and inputs. I would also like to thank Madame Dana Purkarescu, Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of France to India, who immediately accepted with enthusiasm our invitation. It was a great experience to collaborate with Alliance Française Mumbai and work together on this project, which is really close to our hearts. Merci, Stéphane and Sida, for your support. To be frank with you, when we started working on this event, we were not expecting such tremendous response. And I would say we were really amazed by the involvement of our member companies and the policies implemented inside their organization. Also, a great thanks to our sponsor, BNP Paribas, Capgemini, Godrej Industries, Pernod Ricard, Kate & Co, and ABC Consultant. We will be happy to meet you in person next year for the second edition of this seminar with a new format and award ceremonies. So keep your agenda ready. Finally, a great thanks to Tracy, who coordinated the whole event. And if you want Stéphane to say a few words before we close the session, up to you. Stéphane?
Stéphane, you're on mute, I think. Stéphane, you're on mute.
Is it okay now?
Perfect. We can hear you now.
It's okay now. Okay. Thank you, Bruno. Along with Bruno, many thanks to all the panelists, the participants, and the sponsors. Now, maybe just a few words to conclude. We've been talking about LGBT inclusion in the workplace and more generally in society this evening. But like Parmesh Shahani said, the debate must now reach schools, where the formation of the citizen begins. Now, schools are by nature conservative, and France is no exception. But things are moving. I was recently reading just a few days ago, not later than a few days ago, that the French Ministry of Education, which tends to be quite conservative, is setting up a working group on how to address trans identity in schools and how to raise awareness among educators and pupils, with the aim of fostering change towards acceptance. Now, this is a ray of hope, one among many rays of hope that our panelists sowed tonight. So many thanks to them and to the moderators for their great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Last, I would like to let everybody know that we will be doing a social media post on the best questions asked in this event. We've had many questions asked, and unfortunately, due to the time constraints, we could not post them for all the panels. Therefore, we will take it post this session, and we will do a social media post and contact the winners separately. On that note, I hope you have a great day ahead, and good night. Bye-bye.